Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is April 12th, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see Pacific Northwest is right here. Got this weak frontal system swinging through this morning. A little bit of convergence zone activity out there, maybe a little bit of mountain snow. And this trough is going to bring some precipitations that pushes off to the east on into the next couple of days. We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at what is upcoming as we go through the upcoming week as well, because we're going to warm up for some areas. But we do have a couple caveats here. We're going to throw kind of a backdoor cold front across some of the interior mountain west here, and we'll take a look at those details as we go through the video here this morning. We'll also take a look at the extended forecast as always. Now, looking at right now, you can see this little convergent zone activity out here and some showers out across western Washington, some of the higher terrains. We have this trough that is moving across the area. Now, if we take a look here at yesterday, remember what the model said about that lightning activity? They did pretty well, maybe a little bit further south than forecast, but you did have that thunderstorm activity across eastern Oregon on into portions of Idaho. Nothing for Washington or British Columbia yesterday. And again, this is lightning strike density over the last 24 hours and breezy winds and rough flakes as we go through the day, Saturday afternoon and evening. That is today. You can see Wenatchee, Ellensburg, there's some gusts up over 40 miles per hour out there. Watch out if you're across some of the lakes there. Some of these west, northwest, and westerly winds coming down across the area. Spokane topping out at probably about 30 miles per hour as this trough continues to move across the region. You can see they updated that close to 5 a.m. this morning. So some frost advisories out there as well. Probably tomorrow morning, the chilliest day of the bunch coming up here. And you can see that frost potential pointed out by the National Weather Service Portland and also for Eastern Oregon, Washington. Again, probably Saturday night into Sunday morning, the coolest period here coming up. And we go through a bit of a warming trend as we go on in through next week. Now, if we take a look at that daily 2-meter minimum temperature, this is for tomorrow morning. You can see some of the freezing conditions out there. And even though it might not be below 32, you can still get frost forming on some of the outlying areas, especially for western Washington, western Oregon. You see the chillier temperatures across the higher terrain, and check it out there. So today we're going to add 3 minutes and 20 seconds of daylight here, and the sun rises about 6:25 this morning, or it did, and then we set the sun at 7:55, and in a few days we'll be setting the sun after 8 p.m. So I do enjoy these longer days. Very nice. And if you want to do the current weather spotter and observer training, check out the National Weather Service Spokane page, and you can click on my Patreon page. I'll leave that in the link down below, and you can click on that, and it'll give you to that website, and you can check that out yourself. And just a heads up here that this is the National Weather Service changes, notifications, and public statements here. So again, just pointing things out that, we are suffering some degradation in service here from the National Weather Service because of staffing issues. It's only forecast to get worse here. I know a lot of people don't like to hear about this stuff, but I do have to go over it. You can see these upper air sites are now reducing upper air observations because of staffing reductions here. Aberdeen, Grand Junction, Green Bay, Gaylord, North Platte, and Riverton, Wyoming are all reducing the amounts of upper air radiosondes, and also Omaha, Nebraska, Rapid City, and of course Kotzebue here. So multiple stations. This will degrade model efficiency and our ability to predict weather here, and this affects tornado forecasts, it affects hurricanes, it affects everything, and it doesn't just affect the USA, and the European can't just go on its own and just magically do that, because the European takes this data as well and incorporates it into its models also. So anyway, off my soapbox and back to the forecast here, and you can see the trough swinging through here. That's what's continuing to bring some of this showery weather here, and then moving across some of the Intermountain West. Ridge will be building though as we go on in through the rest of the weekend. You can see there's a little bit of a system that's going to be moving by to the north here as we go through the early portion of the week, but Seattle and Portland should remain dry, but you'll see this backdoor cold front kind of drop down here. That could kick some showers off across northeast Washington, maybe even across the Cascades as you go on into the midweek period here, a little bit here, but a fairly dry system. This is not the warm, moist southwest flow that we typically get and bring much more moist conditions and wetter conditions here, but this could bring some impactful weather across some of the Rockies, for example. But you see the ridge is in place. This is what's known as a ridge, and the ridge axis extends all the way up into northwest Canada. There's Alaska right there, and you can kind of see the corresponding trough all the way down towards California there. But this should be bringing some decent weather here across Pacific Northwest as we go through this upcoming week. And then we scroll off into the future a little bit more. You can see the ridge will be with us all the way towards the end of the week. We'll go over the extended forecast here in a moment. But if we take a look, kind of wrapping up the showers today, again, a little bit of snow for the Cascades. You can see this pushing across the Rocky Mountains. This is about 7 p.m. this evening. Still some snow flying here for the higher terrain of British Columbia, Alberta, Rocky Mountains of Idaho, and western Montana. And that largely starts to wrap up as you go through about Sunday evening. By the time we get to Sunday night, that should be kicked off to the east. And you can see this next weak frontal system kind of draped across western British Columbia. But again, a lot of southwest BC, Seattle, Portland will be dry, and then we set up for this backdoor cold front coming down across British Columbia and the Rocky Mountains. The deterministic run doesn't show much into Washington, but it does show some of the snowfall for western Montana, portions of Idaho, BC against Seattle. Portland dry all the way through this week. Come on up here, and as we go towards the end of the week, not much in the way of precipitation coming until probably at least Saturday. And if we take a look at composite reflectivity, again, kind of wrapping things up, you see a few snow showers across the Cascades, and you can see the snowfall occurring across some of northeast Washington, British Columbia, Idaho Panhandle, and western Montana as it kicks off to the east. And again, by the time we get through the day Sunday, that should be off to the east and of no more concern to us here in the Pacific Northwest. So total snow Kachura ratio, if we scroll through the next few hours on into this afternoon, again, maybe a couple of inches here for some of the higher terrain of the Cascades, just wrapping things up. Then you can see the snow across the Rocky Mountains there. And then the backdoor cold front, not that impactful of a storm, but it will bring some snowfall to the higher terrain. And it does clip the Blue Mountains there a little bit, if you notice that, if I go toggle back and forth on the day Thursday. So watch out eastern Oregon, and again, some of the higher terrain. Of course, nothing down into the valley there where Boise is in Treasure Valley, but across the Rocky Mountains could be getting some snow out of that. If we look at lightning flash density potential, as we scroll through the day to day, kind of see this right here. You can't rule out a lightning strike across northeast Washington, the Idaho Panhandle, or some of northwest Montana, Alberta, and British Columbia border there as well. And then you can see that system, of course, like I talked about, will be moving off to the east. Now, this is mean sea level pressure, so it shows what is potentially upcoming here. You can see the ridge building up over the area, and as it does so, you can kind of see this little low pressure center, or not a center, but a low pressure tongue kind of creeping up the coastline there. This is what's known as the thermal trough. I've been talking about this for a few days now, but you start to get some of this offshore flow. You get a little bit of compressional heating off the mountains and whatnot, and you start to get some of these warmer temperatures here. And of course, you got the ridge with the warm air aloft as well. And then we're going to warm up a bit here as we go through the week. So some nice days incoming for some areas. And then you can see as you scroll towards the midweek period here, the high pressure comes inland again and kind of keeps that thermal trough going right along our immediate coastline. How long will that hang out? I'll show you that here in a moment. But if we look at 5,000 feet, you'll continue to see this system pushing off to the east. Then you see the offshore flows, the ridge starts to build over the area, and you see the temperatures aloft just off the surface there start to warm up. And then we get kind of that weak system kind of swinging through midweek. The backdoor cold front swoops down across portions of Montana and some portions of Canada there. And then you can kind of see the differences between the colder air aloft and the offshore flow here. And then again, the thermal trough would be somewhere along the coastline in this scenario. And you continue to see the ridge kind of dominating the weather here along much of the west coast of North America, all the way up into British Columbia. So if we look at the extended forecast, this is the artificial intelligence European model. There's the trough we're dealing with right now. Ridging starts to come in here. Very weak system right there with the backdoor cold front. The European is a little bit further to the west with that. It shows it kicking off a few showers across the Cascades, but again, not an overly wet system dropping down on the eastern periphery of this ridge that will be kind of in control of our weather. But as we scroll off in towards the following weekend, you can see this troughing here dropping down across the region, kind of a chilly upper level low right across Pacific Northwest there. Ridge tries to hang on, but the troughing is apparent as we go on into the extended forecast. And then maybe the following week, who knows, we'll have some rain off and on and whatnot. And then it kind of shows the troughing continuing a little bit, but we'll worry about that as we get closer. We're looking a little bit too far off in the forecast there, but the upcoming week looks fairly nice for much of the region. And if we take a look at that on the European artificial intelligence, wrapping things up as we go through the day tomorrow and kind of keeping things dry, except for western BC, that precipitation, that weak frontal system is draped across the region. Backdoor cold front, you can kind of see that as we go through Wednesday. It kicks off some showers across the higher terrain. Still, Seattle and a lot of the lower elevations of southwest BC would remain fairly dry. Maybe a few showers here for Spokane, the Blue Mountains, and some portions of eastern Oregon. You can see the cold front drop down across Idaho into the Intermountain West there as well. And then we go on into the following weekend. So here we go by Saturday morning. There's Saturday next week, and of course, this trough arrives just in time for the weekend there. But we'll see how that trends over the next few days. Things can still change, but you can see we turn to more cool, unsettled, showery weather as we go on into the extended forecast. Total precipitation in inches. I'll scroll through this really quickly here because this is over a 2-week period, and you can kind of see, inch and a half for Seattle, maybe an inch plus for Portland there. You see Spokane would be right there, Southwest BC. But overall speaking, that would be below normal precipitation values for this time of year. But this is mainly in the first 7 days as we go through this upcoming week, and then we're going to get back towards normal, it looks like. So if we take a look at daily 2-meter max temperature, this is for today. You can see Seattle checking in mid-50s here, some low 60s there, eastern Washington, Oregon. You can see down towards Boise and Treasure Valley. And in fact, let's do this. I'm going to bounce out a little bit here so we can see that a little bit better. You can see the lower elevations of Idaho there. And of course, the Columbia Basin is right there. Now, if you take a look at across BC, of course, there's a lot of higher terrain out there, but you see some of the valley areas that warm up a little bit more. And at this time of year, it becomes a little bit more apparent. There's Okanagan River Valley, there's a Fraser River Valley there up into the interior of British Columbia. These are also cold air conduits in our cold season as well, where Arctic air can come down through these gaps in the terrain a little bit easier. There's also the Stampede Gap in the Columbia River Gorge back and forth. But look at tomorrow. We start to get back up into the mid and upper 60s for portions of western Oregon. Look at Portland, 67. And then by the time we get towards Monday, look at that, a fairly nice day here across the region. We start warming things up. Drop those temperatures back down just a hair there on Tuesday, but still fairly nice. 70 for Portland, some 70s, maybe some upper 70s showing up for eastern Washington. And then we go through Wednesday. We cool off a little bit with that backdoor cold front, the troughing on the eastern periphery of that ridge kind of getting a bit close there. So we'll see, and we'll pay attention to that over the next few days. But we go through Thursday and Friday. Look at that, maybe up towards 70 for Seattle. Look at the interior valleys of British Columbia warming up quite nicely. The plains of the prairies across Alberta. And look at Portland up into maybe the mid 70s there also. And then we go through Saturday, Sunday, and we start to bring another trough in there. It is spring after all, and troughs are never far away at this time of year. You got to take advantage when you do dry out. So 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, there's the above average signal and the below normal signal there for precipitation. But as we go to 8 to 14 day, they're starting to pick up on that troughing a little bit there, and it's starting to show that below normal signal here for some of the Pacific Northwest. And there's the mixed bag as far as precipitation is concerned. So anyway, off to shoot some images and take some video of my son's soccer game here this morning. Hopefully you guys are having a good day. And remember, the rain's wrapping up here. So once it stops today, there's just a few stray showers out and about. Tomorrow should be a better day. And again, much of this week is going to be quite dry across the region. So anyway, we'll do this all again tomorrow. Click like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later.